he's walking down the staircase to come back from upstairs, and he's gone straight through it. And now the staircase has got one massive big hole in the staircase, and and everything's just fallen through.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Designer Future podcast. A bit of a different episode today. I'm going to let Hannah jump straight into it and introduce herself. Just jump straight into it. Let them know who you guys are and what you've been doing.
Super, of course. Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. I'm Hannah and this is George. So we're Do Go Property. We opened the business in June of 2019, primarily doing property sourcing and property investments. Before that, I was in the IT industry doing project management and account management, and it was a bit more different, wasn't it?
Yeah, my background is in law, so I went off to university to do law for 3 years. Worked out in China for a little while, which is funny, but yeah, considering everything that's going on. I didn't really enjoy that very much. So at that point, I was at a bit of a loose end. I went off traveling, where I got into project management of refurbs. Actually got myself quite hands-on with plastering and rendering and other parts of the building trade, and actually quite enjoyed it. So that's sort of our background before property.
Amazing. Yeah, so just talk to me a little bit about the traveling side of things as well, because I've just come back from traveling, so I'm always interested in that.
Yeah, so we actually met traveling, Hannah and I.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I went off traveling to New Zealand to begin with. I was only meant to really go to New Zealand for 6 weeks and then just go to Australia for a few weeks. I extended my trip massively to a year, and I decided to go off. I met a guy that I got on with quite well, so we went off traveling around Asia. That's where I met Hannah. I met Hannah in Malaysia. And then I'll let Hannah talk a bit about her travelling trip.
I think, I started off in New Zealand as well, and then I covered pretty much Asia. I think that was all I did, wasn't it? Asia and New Zealand, yeah. But no, we're massive, big travellers, and this COVID lockdown, especially being in Wales, we've never been this long without a holiday. But yeah, it's one of the reasons kind of why we got into property, wasn't it? So we could travel, have the freedom to do so.
Yeah, just have the freedom to sort of, go off and do what you want, sort of thing. Like last year, we went off on about 6 holidays, didn't we? And this year it's been none really, because we don't want the hassle of it really, coming back and having to go into all this quarantine and stuff, and not really knowing what the laws actually are. And yeah, we're looking forward to a holiday.
Wicked, cool. So you live locally to each other, and you met each other traveling, or did you sort of move?
No, so we met in Malaysia. We met in Malaysia for George. Is originally from London, but he was living in the Isle of Wight. At the time, I've always lived in Wales. So we did long distance for just under a year, I think, wasn't it? And then we had kind of come across some property stuff online. George's family have already done some investments prior, but we kind of got hooked on some of these YouTube videos, started doing a lot of reading.
At this time, I was plastering on the Isle of Wight. Hannah was in IT. It was watching YouTube videos, and then we started moving on to, you bounce off things, don't you? Then you read a book, then you listen to a podcast, then you start indulging all this information, you start really enjoying it. But I was quite risk averse. For me, I had to move to Wales, drop everything I had over on the Isle of Wight, and just come and have a completely new start. But Hannah sort of gave me no choice, to be honest, because she said, right, we need to stop talking about this property stuff and just do it. So she opened a company on Companies House and said, you're moving to Wales.
Nice, I love that. And I think that is a big factor in starting something new, is like you almost need to completely change your environment and get away from those old habits and potentially other people that you surround yourself with. Before I get into some of the questions, just walk me through for the people watching and listening that, okay, they're like, okay, cool, these guys do property, but still won't really understand how you guys, are able to run it and be in a different country, like you said, traveling and still earning money. Just simply walk through, obviously, how you transitioned from like your 9-to-5 jobs to what it sort of looks like for you now in terms of managing your clients.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of limbs to our business. The one that allows us to freely be anywhere is obviously our own property investments, so the properties that we own with tenants in. We have just single buy-to-lets, which have a property that's rented on one agreement basically, which are a lot more simpler, and the tenants tend to typically last longer. So whereas obviously,
very passive.
Yeah, obviously with houses of multiple applications, so students, professionals, where they're just renting by the room, you tend to get a changeover of guests all the time. So that normally has more involvement. So we stick with the buy-to-lets, and that's passive. So for us, we've got a virtual assistant, so we manage our properties ourselves. And she's the first point of contact. So if pretty much when we pick up our properties, that we refurbish them to a high spec to begin with, so we don't actually expect any issues in the first couple of years. But obviously then there's always the same old thing, like a toilet blocking or lights not working, etc., etc. So for us, that's just virtual assistant, first point of contact, and then she's got our contacts of our builders and our tradesmen who she'll then contact to go out. So that part of the business is completely passive.
Yeah, we've got the rent to rent portfolio as well, which is totally passive. I mean, that's probably even more passive, if I'm honest. We literally pass it on to a management company and hear one thing from them at the end of the month, which is absolutely amazing.
Do you want to explain what rent to rent is?
Yeah, so rent to rent is pretty much where we will rent a property from a landlord on a company let, offer them a long-term guaranteed rent, and then we rent it out per night on a service accommodation basis. You can do it on an HMO basis as well, which Hannah has already explained, but we do it on a service accommodation basis, mainly because Article 4 is blanket in Wales, and it becomes a bit of a headache with HMOs. So yeah, that's definitely another passive stream of income that we've got. In terms of sourcing, it's not so passive at the moment, but we're working on it to make it really passive. So we are putting systems in place, processes in place. We've got a lot of automation going on. Our VA is currently working on a lot more systems to make it flow like a stream. And we are also employing people in order to make it a bit more streamlined as well.
Yeah, and for anyone who's listening that doesn't know what sourcing is, so it's pretty much cash rich but time poor investors that we work with, or someone who may have come into money and they know they want to get into property but they don't know how. They might not have the property knowledge, they might not know an area if they're investing outside where they live, and so many reasons why people will use a sourcer, which is what we are. And what we pretty much do is we'll do everything end to end. So we find and secure property deals, whether that's off market, on market, direct to vendor. We have multiple strategies that we use. We will negotiate and secure a good deal on a property. We will then push that through the conveyancing process as quickly as possible. And then we'll bring in our build team and project manage the refurbishment. And then we'll work with a letting agent on the back end then to find the most suitable tenant, or work with an agent if we're flipping that property to sell. So we will do for a fee everything end to end. So that investor has a property that they then rent out, or that they flip to build their part of funds, but obviously with leveraging our knowledge and experience.
Amazing. That's wicked. Obviously you touched on it briefly before. Like doing your traveling, and you wanted something that was passive, that you could be earning you money, whether you was sort of turning up every day or not. But what's the motivation behind the business model? Why have you decided to go into property?
Yeah, so traveling is definitely a big one. So in simple terms, really, just being able to do what you want when you want, which is for us is traveling. But another big thing for us is when we have kids, which is becoming,
it's on the horizon.
Yeah, it's on the horizon. we want to be able to spend a lot of time with them, rather than be those people that are at work all the time and don't really get to see their kids much. We want to be those parents that are enjoying them growing up. That's a big thing for us.
It's just freedom, isn't it?
Yeah. Freedom is the biggest thing, definitely. Just being able to just sort of enjoy the things you want in life.
Amazing. I'm going to send you guys a video after. I watched another podcast yesterday with a family, and they basically done the same thing. When they had a little girl, they basically was like, okay, we're going to go completely online and we're going to travel the world. And because they'd done that, this little girl, she was obviously brought up around these entrepreneurs that was like traveling everywhere all the time. And she was drawing in her book, and they was in the middle of Bali somewhere, and a fashion designer has started speaking to this little girl. No, sorry, they started speaking to the mum and dad, and they was like, oh, I'm a fashion designer. And then the little girl, only 4 years old, was like, I'm a fashion designer too. And then the fashion designers obviously looked into her sketchbook, and then she was looking at it, and then she says to the mum and dad, she was like, oh, which one of you are a fashion designer? Like, they was like, no, we're not fashion designers. And they thought she was that good. Anyway, cut a long story short, this girl was like 12 now. She speaks like she's about 60 years old. And she's built like 2 7-figure like clothing brands since then. So yeah, like that for me is a big factor as well of running an online business, being able to travel and, like you said, being able to spare time for your family. I've heard the Slack going off in the background. Don't worry about that. But what's a few apps that you use on a day-to-day basis, whether it's solely to do with like running an online business or actually niche down within the property game? What are a few apps that you use to sort of help you get by?
Yeah, there's quite a few apps, quite a few software kind of systems, and we're really kind of perfecting our systems and processes at the moment, because in the new year we're really looking to scale the team, and we just want to make sure that everything's as seamless as possible.
With that being said, what are a few things that like you're struggling with as well, like in terms of systems and stuff like that? Because it's always good for me to know as well. What's a few things, like you said, you're trying to put systems in place? What are some of the pain points you're going through at the moment that you're trying to automate with certain systems?
I think so. The pinch points is definitely trying to break the current routine you've got. Trying to force a new process on George, especially if it involves if it involves a new IT app or system. There's a bit of a,
put it this way, Hannah bought me a laptop 3 weeks ago and I only got it out of its box yesterday.
I think it was longer than that. But yeah, it's a nightmare. So I think it's breaking so if I kind of take a step back a bit, so for the first year it was just myself and George, and I'm always embarrassed to admit this, seeing as my background's in IT, but because it was just two, everything was on spreadsheets, everything was just on notes lying around the office. We would just message each other stuff to do. We'd be on the phone. We're obviously together all day, every day. There was no real structure, but it was like an organized chaos.
Sure.
And leaving that so long, getting a year in to then think, you know what, actually everything should be on the cloud. This should be a process in place. We should be using systems. We're causing ourselves more headache than what we should be. We need to change things. Trying to then backtrack, trying to then actually the business had got so busy, trying to then take the time, because you need to take a step back to implement the things, to then perfect the things. Just that was hard. So I think if anyone's, even when they're right at the beginning of their journey in whatever they're doing, the first thing they need to look at is what's going to be the document storage, how am I going to communicate with people, what's the process I'm going to follow. Even if it's just you're a one-man band, have something, because eventually you will hire people that you want to be able to.
Yeah, definitely. It might feel like, for me, doing all those systems and processes at the beginning felt like it was a bit like we weren't concentrating on the things that were making us the money, but in the long term, it's actually beneficial, because you get to a certain point, you think, right, now I really have to, because we're taking on staff. So I'm going to have to backtrack now. But if you get it done from the start, I think it's very beneficial, and it's something that we definitely would have done if we started.
And I think when we started, a lot of our mindset was, we don't need to pay for anything. It's just me and you. Well, that's it. You have to pay for that, or that free trial doesn't really give you much, etc., etc. Whereas now we're kind of like, we're happy to pay for things, and granted it's got to be within your budget and reasonable, but that made it, like, for instance, our first year of accounts we did on a spreadsheet, whereas now, like, everything is in Xero, and that year-end account gave me the biggest headache, purely because we didn't want to spend £15 a month. Like, how absurd is that? So in terms of apps and systems then, so we use Asana. So we use that as like our project management, but also just tracking all of our properties that we view, offer on, sell, etc. Slack we use as our communication channel with our virtual assistant. We use Zapier, which is like an automation app to link all of our systems together. Do certain things. Xero for bookkeeping. DocuSign, I know it's not too much of an app, but that's our godsend, because we did all of our contracts, terms and conditions, everything as here's a document, print and sign it with wet pen, whereas now it can all be done electronically, which is just so much better.
Amazing. I've got you back. Yeah. It's
Oh,
cool.
no, you're still there. Sorry.
No, that's cool.
We use quite a lot to think of it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, sorry, just for the people watching and listening, talking about systems and stuff. Obviously, everyone has different ways of being able to train their staff, and like you said, building these systems. Like you said, that was one thing that you wish you'd done from the start. So, if you could just quickly outline how you sort of how you put these systems together, and then teach them to your VA, for example.
So it took us a good couple of days, but we sat down and looked at everything we do within the business and wrote a step by step, just a high level, what we do, when we do it, like trigger moves. And then we looked at it and went, well, what can actually be automated? What can we be doing differently? So Google Drive, what can we outsource? And like I said, everything at the time was locally and on a laptop. So Google Drive was just like amazing shift into that. So once we then looked at what could be automated and outsourced, that's when we kind of brought our virtual assistant in, and she was key to building those systems as well, because of where she's using the majority of the systems. We wanted to make sure they were user friendly for her. So we had to trial in a few things to see what worked better for her. Sure. Google Drive was a staple thing for us in terms of cloud storage. Zoom is now a big thing. So we just looked at everything in a list, didn't we? And then started implementing things and just documenting it. We've got a manual for each process now, so that whenever we bring on a new team member, there's like a user manual for each process, for each system, for what we use everything for, and then we'll just do team training.
Yeah, we're just making sure we were focusing on the profit generating tasks, and anything that wasn't, and repetitive tasks, they'd just be outsourced to the VA. Anything that could be automated, we've created automations for them. And things we don't enjoy as well. Things we don't enjoy, we outsource as well, because, if you don't enjoy them, you don't get them done efficiently and effectively. So that's a big thing as well. But, in regards to us, saving money at the beginning on little things, we've changed our mindset. Well, I have anyway. It's like focus on making more rather than saving more, because, you can make an unlimited amount, but you can only save a certain amount, if you get what I mean. Yep. So I think that my mindset's changed there, whereas I've grown up in a family which has always been about saving money, whereas now it's all about focus on earning more rather than saving more.
Sorry, really good point. And just stepping back, sorry, just going back to the previous question. For anyone who's looking at how to implement systems, a lot of people, especially if it's just them and their partner, will think, oh, everything works fine. But I encourage anyone to keep a journal for like a week, just documenting everything they do and how long it takes them. And then look back, as George mentioned, and go, well, what's generating me profit, what's making me money, and what's not. And you'll be surprised that actually when you've got it down on paper, how much stuff you don't actually need to be doing yourselves. And that's when then you can bring in members or automate. I think everyone overlooks automation, and it's such a huge thing because it doesn't go wrong.
Yeah, what you'll find with us on podcasts is we get a question and then we just go into depth.
Yeah, sorry.
I love it. I love it. And yeah, no, that's a really good point, and something that I've done in the past is, like you said, journal daily. And I think it's in the book Atomic Habits, but it's like write down all of your daily habits, stuff that you do regardless, and simply look at it and either put a plus or a minus next to the habits that are either going to be moving the needle in your business or not, and then obviously get rid of all the minuses. You mentioned before you've read a few books that obviously you start reading them and you're like, okay, cool, I need to take action on that. Just to keep it very, very broad, let's say someone's jumped onto this, not specifically property, but they've come in and they want to start their own business. Is there a specific book that you would point them towards, or YouTube video? You mentioned a lot of YouTube videos. Anything that sort of stands out in terms of a resource?
A book to start in property?
Or anything, just a good book.
Yeah, just something, whether it's property or in terms of running a business.
Business and getting your mindset in the right sort of attitude to start in business. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, definitely. That will give you the mindset to just go, right, I need to go and get assets, not liabilities, and I need to change my mindset. In terms of mindset to get yourself out of your comfort zone, Susan Jeffers, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, or The Chimp Paradox. They're brilliant books. In terms of property, Simon Zucci, Property Magic, is an awesome knowledge on property and getting you started in the property industry. And yeah, I would just say, just search, you go on YouTube, something you want to learn. All you have to do is just search it into YouTube and it will come up. And then you just start bouncing from person to person, start seeing all these people that are doing what you want to do. And then just try and network with them, listen to their podcasts. And then before you know it, you're just gaining knowledge in all different angles, and then go to networking events, meet people. It's funny how things, it's almost like a snowball effect, isn't it? How you can just like bounce from knowledge to knowledge. And before you know it, you're like, right, I need to take action now.
Amazing. Yeah, the good old YouTube university, we like to call it.
Yeah.
Do you guys use ClickFunnels at all?
We don't at the moment. We've turned them off, but we did. Okay. We don't now because we use them mainly for motivated sellers in regards to property. But to be honest with you, due to the market at the moment and the way it's going, there's not many motivated sellers around, and it was just sort of draining the money. So we turned them off at the moment, but we anticipate that the market's going to end up coming down next year. And during that time, there's going to be a lot of repossessions, a lot of motivated sellers. So we'll probably end up turning them back on then. But for now, at the moment, we haven't got any ads running, have we?
No.
Amazing. And yeah, one thing I'd really like to get at you guys is just like the starting process in terms of if someone's never owned a property themselves, or they're looking to, I know you said about the rent to rent. So I'm guessing for someone that's, not done anything property wise, the rent to rent sort of model would be the easiest barrier to entry. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah. So rent to rent, it's a lot quicker because you don't have a legal process to transfer, obviously, the title. It's pretty much a tenancy agreement that is signed within a couple of days.
Sure.
When you do rent to rent, you're targeting properties that are already done up, so you can then run a service accommodation straight away. So there's no refurb involved. And obviously you haven't got a huge deposit you're putting down for a property. So the barrier to entry in terms of cost is much, much lower. But it really goes back to what someone's individual goals are, because with a rent to rent, although you're controlling the property, you don't own it. So you're not benefiting from the capital appreciation, and rent is always typically higher than a mortgage payment. So it really depends on what that person is looking for. I think if anyone's looking to get into property, I wouldn't be scared to do so. It's not as daunting as it seems, depending on which strategy obviously you're going to go for. If you're going for a buy-to-let, obviously you can still buy one on a mortgage that doesn't need any work, that you can rent out straight away, but be mindful that that deposit's then typically locked in that property. I think if you reach out to people and you get advice and you're just cautious and you're making the right decisions with the help of other people who have experience, then I just say go for it.
Yeah, I think rent to rent's definitely a good strategy to get into, to provide you with that initial cash flow in order to give you that sort of freedom and time to then build your assets. Because most people's sort of goals are to build the assets, but rent to rent is something where you get high cash flow and it's a little cash outlay in the beginning. So yeah, it's definitely good to get a few of those to start with and get you on the property ladder, I suppose. But yeah, you want to pin down your goals really, because a lot of people end up building a massive rent to rent portfolio and then think, well, I don't, I haven't built any assets here. My long-term goal is to build assets. In regards to rent though, as well, I would definitely be careful in the current market, just because of we're going in and out of lockdown. So make sure you're doing your due diligence, make sure you're running it at 50% occupancy with management, breaking even at that point, 100%. But yeah, that I think we've answered the question, haven't we?
Amazing, cool. So in terms of like the social media stuff as well, how has that impacted the business? Because obviously I'm guessing it's allowed you to do stuff on a wider scale, not just sort of in your location. So talk to me a little bit about how you first started implementing social media and how you sort of use it on a day-to-day now.
Yeah, social media has been really powerful for us in the way that we've provided value and content right from the very beginning, and that's helped people. That's meant people have come to us rather than us going to people. So powerful, and it's powerful in the way that you can network, but you can, in a networking event, you might go around a room and you're only going to talk to 20 people, whereas on social media you're talking to thousands of people at the same time. So, you know, even in a networking event, even if you're there for 2 hours, for example, you're not going to get around even 30 people, but on social media, you just get out to so many people, which is just so powerful, the leverage of social media. In terms of how we started in social media, we just documented everything from the very beginning. We're totally honest and transparent. We're brand new. This is what we're doing. Follow our journey. What we did is we documented everything we were doing, as well as creating content. So we'd read something and then put our opinion on it. We'd just create basically mindset, all sorts of different avenues that we can help people with in terms of creating content, and then just put in everything that we're doing in terms of documenting. So, oh, look, we've viewed a property today, we've met this agent, and we've put in this offer. These are the sort of things we learned on this property today. And then people have been following our journey. And then 3 months later, they'd see, well, you've grown here. I'm interested in having a chat. So a lot of the times people have been watching us for, say, 6. We get people now that have watched us for a year and a half, and they're like, right, we watched you for an year and a half. We want to get involved with you now, which is powerful because they've followed us and watched everything we've done, and now they want to invest. So in terms of what we do with social media, really, is we get ourselves on the camera as much as we possibly can, because people buy from people and we want to put our personality across. We keep a consistent color theme throughout all our posts to make it recognizable, but also professional. We get ourselves on as many social media channels as we can to be everywhere, in everyone's faces as much as we possibly can. So we're on everyone's mind all the time, basically. And yeah, we basically post every day, or we try on social media, and put ourselves on the story as much as we possibly can as well.
You can tell George is social media.
I love it. And have you guys ever considered doing YouTube? Because I know you just said, whenever you look to learn something, you're like, YouTube.
It's really funny you say that, because yesterday I had a chat with a VA, and I said, one thing I've noticed that I still seem to do is put IGTV videos on Instagram, and I've started to notice that the engagement, well, I've known for ages, but I just still do it. I know the engagement is nowhere near as high as when it's just a 1-minute video. So I've said to the VA, right, let's start, because she's like really got the hang of social media now, of the channels we've got. So now it's time to introduce YouTube. So I think we can start putting the 1-minute videos on with a really gripping sort of like part of the video, and then go, right, for the rest of the video, divert over to YouTube, and then we'll have YouTube videos running all the time. So I've asked the VA yesterday, to start designing our YouTube channel, and then we can have a look at it, and then we're going to start putting out at least 1 video a week, which is going to be creating content and also documenting content.
Amazing. Yeah, and the thing with YouTube is, like you said, people are going there to learn something. So when you say about like the know and trust, the amount of people that you can impact literally on an autopilot basis after you do that initial video, of course, is so powerful. And it's a search engine at the end of the day. So if someone comes in and they're like, how to start a property business in Wales, and you're the first person that comes up, of course, they're going to start to build that relationship with you. And if you're posting stuff on Instagram as well, you're sort of killing 2 birds with 1 stone in a sense. Guys, obviously this is the Designer Future podcast. I love getting people on. Like you said, you've documented your journey from the start, which is amazing. I've sort of done that in my own sense as well. So where are you guys sort of hoping to be within the next 12 months? Because I'd love to get you on a year from now and sort of look at what we've been speaking about and say, like, we've checked off those goals.
We've got quite a lot planned for the next 12 months, ambitions wise, if obviously the climate change a bit and allows us to do what we've planned.
That's not going to stop us.
No, but we've got we're scaling the sourcing business. So in the new year now, we're going to start looking at hiring more staff, UK-based staff, full time, so we can get more deals. Because at the moment we cover South Wales, but we want to start covering wider areas. So the sourcing business, we're going to scale. We're going to systemize more. so that we can almost step back from that ever so slightly, so we can then focus on building our portfolio to much bigger than what it currently is. And we want to start looking at those bigger deals, those commercial to residential conversions. It's something that we're really, really interested in. So that's kind of what's going to take the majority of our attention. But our aim is to become a one-stop shop for investors. So as I mentioned earlier, with the sourcing, we will find the property, but then throughout that journey, we're then involved in a lot of other businesses, whether it's trades, whether it's the builders, whether it's a letting agent. We essentially want to bring all of that in-house, so that when we work with an investor right from the beginning right through to the end, and going on if it's managing the tenants, that all is within our remit.
Yeah, so it's just a complete one-stop shop, because so many people are like, oh, can you recommend these, can you recommend that? And we're like,
we're giving money away.
Yeah, we're like, this is something that we can all keep in-house, but we need to focus on what we're focused on now and don't get the shiny penny syndrome yet, because we could run over to all these different things and go, right, let's start that. But firstly, we need to focus on the sourcing, systemize that, and then once that's systemized, then we can start focusing on the different elements that help us source it.
Yeah, it needs to be a controlled expansion, otherwise it just won't be a success.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and I suppose that's something that you'll continue to expand over the years of working with different people. I know a lot of like property investors will have sort of relationships with builders that obviously if they get them involved in a project, then they take a percentage of the profits and stuff like that. That's really cool. One thing I'd love to sort of get out of you now would be some funny stories. I bet you've seen some weird things over the years in terms of tenants or landlords and stuff like that. Is there a few stories that sort of come to mind?
The most recent one, remember when we went to that viewing the other day and they had all that stuff going out the toilet? So when we go and view properties, the properties that we target are the ones that are really run down, because we want to get in and transform the whole thing. So it's not a lick of paint; it is literally like the majority of the time we take it back to brick, and some of the people still live there as well.
I've got quite a good one actually. It's quite hard to think off the spot, but I think this is quite a good one. So we bought a house recently. It's actually completing today. And it's a complete tip. I mean, what's happened is the valley of the roof has split, and water's just been running through it for 6 years. It's been vacant. It's boarded up. So it's been running through this water, and all the woodworks, the joists, the internal walls, everything is just rotten, wet rock throughout. So the staircase isn't the best either. So we got the surveyor round to come and have a look round, and we did warn him that the staircase was a bit rotten. But he was like, I'll be fine. He ended up falling right through the staircase. He's walking down the staircase to come back from upstairs, and he's gone straight through it. And now the staircase has got one massive big hole in the staircase, and and everything's just fallen through, where you can see where is the residue of his fall.
Oh God.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite
a good one. That was a recent one as well.
Yeah, that's a recent one.
Oh, bloody hell. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to leave your Instagram's probably the best place for people to find you at the moment, right? I'm going to leave their Instagram in the description below. And of course, if they have got their YouTube channel up by the time this goes up, obviously go ahead and subscribe to these guys. Definitely be putting a lot of knowledge and value on their YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys, for coming on. People watching and listening, I shall see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye. Hey, what now? 106.